You should keep that going.
I know.
We had a really good conversation going right prior to hitting record. Someday, maybe. Yeah, it was a good talk. But now this isn't, well, we're not going to completely, I'm not going to get into what we were just talking about. But, you know, I was on social media. I wasn't watching TV. I don't watch all that much TV. I watch a few things. We're still going through Suits.
Are you
I know
really?
I was late to the Suits party, but my wife and I, we don't watch stuff. I mean, a little bit. But by the time we sit down and turn the TV on, she falls asleep 5 minutes into whatever we turn on anyway. And so, but she will stay awake for an episode or two of Suits. And I'm almost done with it. And I'm kind of, you get bummed when you get to the end of something.
I know.
I've really enjoyed that.
Oh, man. You can develop a relationship with the characters.
I know.
And you're like, oh, no.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of like that with Yellowstone.
I know. I just saw Kevin Costner just came out today. And
yeah.
'cause I follow his stuff and follow him. And he came out today. And he's like, I'm done with Yellowstone.
He was on Howard Stern this week.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, I saw some clips of that.
Because he's got his new film coming out, which looks amazing.
Well, and Taylor Sheridan's doing so many different shows now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And maybe it's, I remember the same thing when The Sopranos ended. I was like, how can you end when you're at the top of your Seinfeld? Same thing, the top of your game. Yep. And a lot of those people, Seinfeld's talked about this a lot in interviews. They're like, when Larry David stepped aside and whatnot, he's like, I never wanted to get to the point where, okay, that was too much. Yeah. And that was the term, was jumping the shark.
Yeah.
He never wanted to get to the point where, and he talked about being on stage. He said, as being a comedian, he goes, 20 minutes, they love you. 25.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything left, they walk away going,
Yep, that's it.
And there's a fine line of knowing when enough is enough. Yeah. And so maybe with Yellowstone, that's the case.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was watching, I've never watched this show, and you'll understand where I'm going with this. And this kind of will relate to it. So I was watching, and I was on social media, and I saw a clip of the NBC show New Amsterdam. It's some medical drama.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Well, they had an episode that just aired where a doctor was explaining to a mother that her son's tumor was growing because of internalized racism. And I read it again. I said, what? And so finally I read the quote again, and then I actually watched the scene. And sure enough, on NBC, they're saying
that was the diagnosis,
that he's a racist so his tumor's getting bigger. So then a friend of mine, he decides, he's like, well, that's crazy. And you'll understand where we're going with all this. He goes on Chat GPT and he asks the question, can racism contribute to cancerous tumor growth? Chat GPT said yes. And he screenshot it and sent it to me.
No way. So
you'll kind of see where we're going on all this stuff. But another example of in these days, and we did a whole episode recently on truth, and it's another example of 2 + 2 = 5 now. Create your own truth, your own language, your own values. We are, it feels like, and this gets into the AI thing, and that's where I'm kind of going with this. The transhumanist movement is where I want to talk. And we've talked some about this, but this one was like, wait a minute, we got to talk about this again. And how what we're witnessing now, and I don't think you have to be even necessarily having a walk with the Lord or a Christian person or anything else to know and see it's a rebellion against God, plain and simple.
100%
is what we're seeing in our world. And we're living in the upside down.
We are living in the upside down.
It's insane.
Which is a good reference.
And so I had heard this, and you'll know this better than I did. I kind of had to read through this, but I had heard some comparisons in speaking about AI and what's coming, like it or not. a little bit to Genesis 11 and the Tower of Babel.
Yep, exactly.
And you'll probably, I'm going to start this, but I want you to weigh in this. Well, so the people then, if you don't know what this was kind of all about, the people, it basically says the people were one and they had one language. That's Genesis 11:6.
Yep. And
therefore, this is not Genesis, this is my interpretation. They really had one truth.
Yep.
So there weren't other interpretations of the truth, or even interpreters, because they all had one language. So without asking God, the people started building a tower to get to heaven and to honor essentially themselves. And a false idol, a false temple is essentially what it was. So this did not make God happy. So he scrambled their language and they couldn't understand each other. In their effort of self-elation, disobedience, the Babylonites were in a way seeking some kind of self-empowerment through technological means.
Yeah.
And then I was going through reading a whole bunch of stuff, and I saw that people were talking about technology, what it means, and then how it relates to language, words, truth. So it doesn't just mean we always think of technology as being a great new iPhone or a gaming system. It isn't. It's basically, it is, but it has a deeper meaning than that. And when you look back at Babel, and even the ability to build a tower, and then using language, that was their technology. And we are seeing so many similarities with what is going on today in the self-empowerment, self-elation, and disobedience, and it's going to get worse.
And it's going to get worse. The Bible said that in the last days, speaking of as Jesus comes back, that there will be an increase of people being lovers of selves. Now, since the Garden of Eden, the human race, as we know it, loves to be about self. We know that. And we see examples of that all over the place. But we're living in interesting times right now, particularly when it comes to transhumanism, also known as posthumanism to some people. But this transhumanism, I've been fascinated by it for the last couple of years because it's actually an echo to something coming out of the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment. It's a mirror image of some things. So if you go back to the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, what you saw was a shift in Western civilization. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, you had a culture was very spiritualistic. Not even Christian, but just spiritualistic. Some of that was superstition. Some of that was a lot of stuff that was like, okay, that's foolishness attached with some sort of spiritual meaning to it. But what we saw was a significant polar shift during the Industrial Revolution, the Enlightenment movement. Out of the Enlightenment was something called secularism, and it's the idea of we don't need God anymore. And in fact, believing in God is going to hold us back. And it was the Enlightenment in many ways was a new form of the Tower of Babel. And when you go back to that story you just read in the Old Testament, you got the dude Nimrod. What a great name, right? Nimrod. And it was all pride. It was arrogance. So like, we're going to be God, which again was what Satan looked at Eve and said in the garden with the tree, hey, you can be God. And so throughout human history, man has always wanted to be God. And whether you even say that or not, but people today, we make ourselves gods. We want to be God. We want to be in control. We want to be in power. All of those we want to be worshipped. We want to, all those sort of things. So it's not far to think that even in your average human person kind of has this God complex. But then you get it at a whole diabolical place where we worship ourselves and all that kind of stuff. We worship at the altar of self. Here's an interesting thing on transhumanism. So some of you may be listening to the World Economic Forum, the WEF.
Talking about pure evil, man.
Oh, my goodness. These guys and gals, this entity is, it's just evil. It's evil. Every part of them is evil, and they try to come off really smart. And we're going to save humanity and all this kind of stuff.
Have you seen the kind of clothes they're wearing now?
Oh, yeah, it's
the
weird. It's
capes and
cultish.
looking like Voldemort.
Yeah. Totally.
It's like you're not even trying to hide it anymore.
It's like a scene out of Harry Potter.
It is crazy.
It is.
Go ahead, sorry.
But they're evil.
Completely.
And so here's the interesting thing. So just to tie a couple threads, the word secular, because we are living in a secular society, secular culture, secular humanistic, all that. I heard someone say secular, define that. And secularism is how we live without God at its core basis. Okay, so how do I live when I'm not connected to the purpose of God, the existence of God, what God's values are, what God's morals are, his bearing, all of that. It's where you erase God out of the equation altogether, and we then set ourselves up as God. That's what secularism is. I heard it explained this way, that secularism is reverse exorcism. And the way it's described is this, is that when Jesus showed up and saw demon-possessed people, he removed the demon from the person. Secularism wants to exorcise or remove Jesus out of society. And that's why they call secularism reverse exorcism. It's everything it can to get Jesus out of society, get Jesus out of, and that's what secularism does. It wants to get God out of our lives. But here's the interesting thing: a lot of us live that way, because the opposite is to ask this question: does Jesus have access to all areas of my life?
Right.
Because isn't it true we're very compartmentalized? I'll give Jesus access to, my feelings, or I'll give him access to
he's not getting
what
my
I
wallet.
want. He's not getting my wallet. Forget that. That's my money.
Yep.
My money. I earned that, and I'm not even giving him 10% because that's all mine. But that's just a small example of, we all practically go, I don't think I really give him access to my whole life. I don't think I love him with all my heart, all my soul, all my mind, all my strength. I think we compartmentalize the areas we do give him access or control, but that's a whole other podcast. But listen to this. I'm going to read this to you. Speaking of this transhumanistic movement, transhumanism, they would even call themselves post-humanism. They would say that we are now evolving to the next phase of human enlightenment and human development, using AI, using technology, all those sort of things. And out of the World Economic Forum, there's become one significant voice. He's a very famous author. He's a secular humanist, happens to be Israeli, which is interesting. But he said it this way. He wrote a book, and the title of his book is Homo Deus, and it's the idea of, that's Latin for humans or God. And he says this, he goes, I titled the book that because we really are becoming gods in the most literal sense possible. And he's one of the leading voices on transhumanism. And that's what this, I'll read it to you again. He says, I titled the book that because we really are becoming gods in the most literal sense possible. He goes on to say this. His name's Yuval Noah Harari. He goes on to say this: human history began when men created gods. It will end when men become gods. That is the motive behind the transhumanist movement. And it's really, and by the way, just for clarity, because people go, oh, are you talking about transsexual? That's not, they're two different things. There is a common element, but they're related very remotely. But the point of it is that they actually believe that we're in the evolutionary next cycle, that we can become gods. We have been enlightened enough. We have technology enough. We can reorient brains. We can create now artificial intelligence, because here's what they're saying. And he goes on in this book to explain that through artificial intelligence, it becomes the otherness, the ultimate, the transcendent form of authority now. We've actually created something that's going to be smarter than anything on the planet, and therefore it becomes like God, and that's going to be tapped into us. They actually believe that with technology, we can, and they're promoting this, by the way, we can actually, like you take a drive and put it into a computer and you can upload and download. They actually believe that as AI evolves, we're going to be able to connect that to the human brain and will be able to evolve the human brain beyond all human limits that we've ever had in the human race. So they really do believe we are in the next stage of evolution. That's the next stage of human enlightenment, and we are going to be gods. That is what they teach and believe.
How was the movie The Matrix so ahead of its time?
No kidding. That's exactly what that is.
Because the whole thing is.
That's exactly what that is.
I mean, that's crazy. And we've talked about this before. I love The Matrix, the whole trilogy, but The Matrix has this Christian underlying theme.
Yeah.
With Neo being the one.
Oh, yeah.
And even like at the very end, the main computer
parallels.
says it is finished.
Oh, the parallels are
it's crazy.
all over.
And I think that and I don't know this. I think I've read that that was intentional.
Yeah, it was intentional. Both the brothers who were the brains behind the Matrix and the series of the Matrix are very spiritual, not Christian, but very spiritual, and they tied in a lot of Eastern
but there was some like biblical
mysticism. Oh, of course.
Even like some of the phrasing.
Absolutely. Oh no, they were so intentional to take parallels.
Like in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so this is crazy because Satan's a counterfeit. Satan loves to take things, the words, the ideas of the Bible of Jesus, but redefines them. And that's what you saw in the Matrix. It was very much a parallel to a lot of comparison to Jesus, the Bible, and you saw that play it out. Here's what's fascinating. People don't know this. Everybody knows who Superman is, right? Everybody knows who Superman is.
Sure.
Like, yeah, come on. DC Comics, we all know who Superman is.
Son of Jor-El.
Yeah, exactly. Son of Jor-El, exactly. And we grew up watching, and we love it. I love all the Supermans. It's awesome. People don't know where it actually came from. The person that came up with that is a German philosopher.
I didn't know this.
Yeah.
And I'm a Superman guy.
and it's actually in Germany it's very interesting. A lot of stuff in Germany was I think a lot of German philosophers, Hegel, Karl Marx, twisted people.
Yeah.
And you see it even manifested in Hitler and all of that. But when you look back to these Nietzsche is where I'm going with this. And so if you look at who Nietzsche was, what did Nietzsche's famous classic saying? God is dead. He's known for saying that. And Nietzsche believed this. He in German, he coined the phrase Superman. It started with Nietzsche. In German, it was called Überman. Nietzsche believed this. And this is why I'm coming back to these philosophies that have integrated into our pop culture today, and now it's even evolving to transhumanism. But Nietzsche believed that God was dead, and Nietzsche also believed that religion was oppressive. And he believed that the human person, humanity, the human being, could not evolve because we were being suppressed. And the way that we needed to evolve was to let our urges go to its maximum expression. We need to take all these things that are inhibiting us, and religion inhibits us. Actually, religion holds humanity back from its evolution. And so Nietzsche was a big fan of saying God is dead, but he believed this. He said, but this is, if you study the history of Nietzsche, it's fascinating. Nietzsche said, because he was a secular humanist, he was an atheist, he said God is dead, but he also went on to say this: we can't lose the contribution that the Christian faith brought to the world because it would collapse overnight. And so what he said was, we can't just kill Christianity. We have to replace it. And his philosophy was, we replace it with self. And so he basically created this idea of the philosophy of the Uberman, the Superman, that we can actually evolve, and we can, without the inhibitions of religion, we can finally move to the superhuman beings that we can be destined to be. That's where Superman came from. That's when you watch it, you're like, he's a superhuman on purpose. And that's fun. We love that. But if you know the history of it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's tied back to Nietzsche.
Kidding. Wow.
It is. But then now you go transhumanists. They're talking about the new Superman kind, we're in this again, and it comes from secular humanism. It comes back to the Tower of Babel, goes back to the Garden of Eden. It's the demonic lie that man can become God, and I don't need God. I can be my own enlightenment, which is why we're seeing such a push now for relativism, which is my own truth, my own path, my own way. I can do whatever I want. It's all promoting that we are little gods. That's the culture and society, and that's what transhumanism's pushing towards.
It's so amazing, and it's because some are arguing, and I hear this, that AI will innovate, it'll sharpen, it'll make the world a better place, and then others contend that it'll be social decay on steroids.
Yep.
That in pretty short order, we're going to see the extinction of humanity. So is that what they think is human evolution, or is it just plain and simple a rebellion against God?
I think it's 100%.
And as you said, since the garden and the fall of man has sought to exalt himself above God.
Exactly.
You mentioned that. So
Mark Sayers, who's a pastor in Australia, and he's really a cultural architect in terms of breaking culture down and bringing spiritual. He's really a brilliant mind. This is what he says. He says, what we are experiencing is not the eradication of God from the Western mind, but rather the enthroning of the self as the greatest authority.
Yeah, you're replacing human intelligence.
Exactly. That's what we're in, that era right now. This is why the Bible said in the end they'll be lovers of self. And Timothy talks about in the end people will seek out Bible teachers and pastors who just want to tickle their itching ears. Like we just want it to be all about me, all about me, all about me, all about me. And so it's not a cultural issue. It is, but it's also creeping into churches where it's all about just me, affirm me, and the affirming movement that's happening. This is the biggest debate that's happening in churches right now, or one of the biggest ones, is are we going to be affirming to whatever sexualization anybody wants to identify with?
It all comes back to sex. Why? Always.
Absolutely.
Always.
And that's what is happening right now is who's really the ultimate authority and what AI is going to do. I really believe this. AI is this because this is their goal. That's why they've said this. I've watched videos of the World Economic Forum. I've read their material. They're not hiding this.
No.
I tell people all the time, this is a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, there's no secret on this.
Yeah, well, go look at it.
This is, you can hear it from their own lips. They literally believe, just like Nimrod with Babylon, their objective is we're building the towers because we're going to evolve and we're going to erect ourselves as gods, and we will save the planet. We will be our own saviors.
Yeah.
And we don't need Jesus. We don't need God. You can be your own God. We can be our own savior and salvation. We can, all that kind of stuff. And it is creeping into churches through the vehicle of relativity. It's all you, be who you want. And God will bless it and God will honor it. No, God's not going to bless that. And you are rebelling against God. And that's ultimately what self-worship is. It's rebellion against God.
So the question then is, I don't understand how people can't see that this human movement is anti-human. So the push
That's funny you say it that way.
The push toward nuclear war, AI is anti-human, transgenderism is anti-human, people acting against their own long-term interests. So where I go with this is, okay, now this is another, back to the evil part of it. So any movement that is anti-human is probably not human. Right?
Uh-huh.
So when you're behaving in ways that are anti-human, wouldn't it make sense to think that you're likely being acted upon by spiritual forces that are anti-human?
Exactly. And that's the whole point. It's demonic, which is anti-human because it's anti-God. And I think the other thing too is God created humanity in his image. And now Satan wants to create humanity to create God in our image. And so what we're doing is we're elevating ourselves as God,
Which he did in the garden.
exactly. And so this is why it's so seductive. They're not even going to say you don't believe in God. You don't have. We can evolve to become our gods, not by not believing in God, but by we dictating who God is. That's how subtle this is. It's you rewrite scripture because you're the authority. You get to define things, and God has to conform to you. You don't conform to him. He's not the creator. In Romans chapter 1, it says that humanity just lost it. Because what you talked about is anti-human, and you talked about it's self-destructive. This is all on a path
And how
of
do people not
self-destruction.
see that?
They're blinded. That's what I think. I think people are blinded because they actually believe, just like Eve and Adam in the garden, believe they took the apple or the fruit, whatever, the representation of that, because they bought into the lie that I can be God. My eyes will be open. I'll be enlightened. I'll know the difference between good and evil, because that was the temptation of Satan. And so I think every single day there's the temptation of, do I want to be God? And so there's a path right now, and it's a deconstructing, demolishing, self-destructing path. This is why the deconstruction movement, which is a word that's used a lot in churches right now, and I say it because I've heard it this way, that a lot of deconstruction ends up in deconversion. And people are talking about, I'm deconstructing my faith, I'm deconstructing my faith, I'm deconstructing my faith. No, what's really happening, 99% of people when they're deconstructing their faith, is they're reconstructing it around themselves. That's what's really happening. I'm putting myself at the center. I'm redefining God. I'm redefining his word. And it's all centers around me. That is literally the days that we are living in. So that's what I'm saying. It's not even like there's a movement away from God. That would be one thing. It's a movement away from God as we still hold on to a view of God, but a view of God in my image. That's how twisted it is.
It's crazy. And then there's the whole basic thing, the lie in the name here. Artificial intelligence. It's not artificial.
Right.
That's the other part.
Right.
It's programmed by someone. People act like it's just the truth.
Oh, totally.
It's not. And the sheep, as you talked about being blinded, will take it as gospel. So it's essentially then, if you want to put it this way, it's artificial intelligence versus divine intelligence. Correct?
Exactly. That's it right there. And that's what they are talking about in their books and in their workshops and their conferences. They're talking about what you just said. It's redefining who is the ultimate authority. And AI will be seen as the ultimate authority. And this is why it's crazy. I play with Chat GPT, and I'm not even saying it's all bad. I mean, there's a lot of cool things that are happening with AI right now. So I'm not saying it's all bad. There's a lot of cool things, but I kind of like, I know there's some pastors who use it. Again, I think there's some okay stuff with it. What I get concerned about with AI is that it, out of so much convenience, what's the convenience, Mike? Well, when I write a sermon, it takes a lot of prep work. To deliver a 30-minute message can take you, if you do a good job with it, 20 or 30 hours of research and study and heart prep and listening to the Lord and prayer and all that. And we live in such a convenience-oriented world that now I played with this. So last year I downloaded ChatGPT, and I'm like, I'm going to play with this sucker. And I was getting ready to do a workshop teaching on spiritual warfare. And so I put into ChatGPT, I said something along the effects of, write a paper on spiritual warfare. And within 30 seconds, I had 5 pages of research that I had put together. I mean, it was that fast. And I started reading through it, and I went, wow, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
This thing is... Now, I've done a lot of research in the area, so I can kind of recognize that. But you can commit spiritual malpractice. If you are someone who's driven by convenience and you go, you know what, I'm just going to lean into ChatGPT or some other whatever AI thing and short circuit the actual true pastoral heart work of seeking the Lord, hearing his voice. Putting a sermon together is not about convenience.
Yeah.
Preaching is not about convenience. It's about connection with God. And if you're too busy to be connected with God, then don't be preaching.
Yeah.
And this is my pet peeve of mine.
It's
Again, I'm
moral
not saying there's
crossroads
not
here for a lot of these guys coming up.
That's what I think. And again, I'm not saying there are some. I've heard some really good resources lately that are actually really cool tools. And so I'm not saying all AI is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, with the impulse to be so convenience oriented, the temptation will be there to short circuit the true process that I think brings integrity and responsibility. You know, the Bible, Timothy talks about this, talks about being a workman who rightly divides the word of God. And it tells us there, like, study to show thyself. That's what it says. Study to show thyself approved unto God. A workman who divides the word of God, who gets into it, who chews on it, meditates on it, studies that. And I think that the convenience robs us of the true intimacy process of hearing from God. So when you come as a pastor to deliver something, you're not just giving information. That's not what the whole process is meant to be. So that's a tangent I just went down, but I think, like, as we look at this, I'm just saying that it's so easy out of convenience. So now, when you look at other things that are non-pastoral, non-spiritual, just things in society, who's to say that, that AI does not actually evolve? I mean, I think it's very likely that AI could evolve to solve some of the most impossible problems that we've been facing. It wouldn't surprise me if AI creates a cure for cancer. That wouldn't surprise me.
If it's written honestly, though.
Well, that's the thing. You've got input from humans that can sway,
and it's
influence.
disruptive.
Exactly.
And if it starts to disrupt the almighty pharma companies and their money, they're not going to allow that.
Of course not.
And whoever's programming it, they're not going to have carte blanche on what they get to program. That's my point. It's not artificial intelligence. It's programmed by somebody. So that somebody gets to play God over everybody. And that's the weird part about this is, so from our standpoint, if human beings were created in the image of God,
Yep.
then to defame human beings is to defame God.
Yep.
Saying basically through technology and AI that humans are inadequate. And is that your defense against, and in fact, your eager advancement toward a time when humans aren't necessary anymore? Because you actually hear human beings saying this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Which is mind-boggling to me. So is it one of those things where the line that from Jurassic Park where
I remember that. Just because
just because you could doesn't mean you should. And I know that's probably been an issue with human beings, and I'm sure we failed that test every single time. But there's so much on this.
Well, there's a lot on this, and I think at the end of the day, too, it's what's the source of authority. See, that's where, for me, my flags that I have up right now that I caution is everybody's looking right now. We live in a world where everybody claims to be an authority. Everybody claims to be an authority. Look what's happened in the last 4 years, and look what's happening now when people who were Fauci, for instance, who came out as the authority, look where that got us, right? And some of us were saying, hold on. Everybody's like, oh, he's the authority. He knows all. Let's trust everything he says. And now what's happening globally, by the way, people are coming out going, oh, we were off. In fact, not only were we off, but we were manipulating and controlling people because we said, well, he's the authority. And you made promises.
That was an overstep.
It was an overstep. And all I'm saying is that people have always claimed to be authorities. That's just one example. And then what comes out is they really weren't. And we went all in on them, and we are told to trust them. What I'm concerned about is that AI will be positioned as a narrative. Like, it will be positioned as an authority in our world. That is a concern I have. AI, whether it is or not, the way it will be praised, the way that it will be celebrated, the way out of convenience it'll be embraced, it will evolve, I think, to be seen as some sort of an ultimate authority. Now, for those of us as Christians, I might have a better way of handling that because I can say, well, God's my authority. I can probably navigate. But I'm talking about people in the world who will go, well, I don't, this is my God. This thing can solve problems. And you begin to build a trust relationship with it. And there's going to be narratives. There's going to be stories. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. And we're going to go, oh yeah, this thing will be elevated to a position of authority. I see that as a potential outcome because especially if it begins to solve things. It may not solve everything and it doesn't need to. I'll give trust to somebody if they solve just enough things. And so you look at AI and
but can they be trusted with that responsibility?
No, I don't think so. But I think what's going to happen is all AI needs is some significant breakthrough that gets globally celebrated. And from that moment on, it'll be a carte blanche, trust it with everything. Because it won us this, what else could it win? And it's a perfect setup for deception. And the Bible talks, by the way, the Bible talks about this, that in the last days before Jesus comes back will be great days of deception. And I've often wondered, I wonder what that's going to look like. And listen, why Satan is so deceptive is because he knows how to use enough truth. He knows how to take enough truth and packages it in such a way that, oh yeah, there's some truth on that. But then it leads to the falseness and it leads to the deception. He baits deception with truth. And so most of us don't wake up one day and go, I'm just going to go follow something that's false. There has to be enough good in it. There has to be enough truth in it. But the overall agenda and the overall allegiance it wants from us is going to be based on deception with an outcome that's not good for us. So those are concerns that I have. And people look at me and go, dude, you're just too old.
No.
You don't get it, whatever. And I'm like, listen, maybe, but I think these are days that God says be discerning.
But there was a time when I would say, given such power, such potential power, I would say, well, there's going to be oversight. There's going to be there's going to be governmental oversight to this stuff. But now, you mentioned COVID, you mentioned Fauci. Nobody trusts that anymore. Sorry, you blew that. And I think this generation of young people, they've witnessed that. You blew it with those people. They're never going to forget this stuff, what you did. And the more and more that comes out about Fauci and all that stuff, you've put a dent in this next generation of kids in terms of trusting the idea that there will be some kind of oversight. And you talked about authorities and kind of false authorities. And one other thing I've been reading about lately from Bill Gates and his evil friends has been this narrative that the planet is overpopulated.
Oh, yeah.
So they're constantly saying there's too many people. And now you can wrap this into COVID if you want. I'm not being a conspiracy guy. But as a result, and this doesn't get talked about, the only guy talking about this really is Elon Musk a lot. We're seeing population collapse.
Yeah.
So at the current projections, and I read this the other day and I had to read it 4 different places before I believed it. At the current projections, Japan and South Korea will not exist in 100 years. That's like 2 generations, not even 2 generations, because the birth rate is unsustainable. And they've talked about kids now, and the younger people aren't, not only to some degree, aren't settling down and finding a mate. A lot of them aren't even really that interested in having human contact and sex.
Yeah.
And you go, wait a minute, what? Because when we were kids, it was the end all be all.
Yeah.
To some degree. I mean, you have to,
every 80s movie was.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Yes, exactly. Of course it was. But now it's like that's not even. So with that is falling the birth rate. But it goes against what some of these clowns like Gates and these guys have tried to preach about overpopulation. So then you go back and go, Well, again, call me whatever you want to, but you go back to Gates, who also was, of course, one of the guys who was pushing the idea almost kind of as it was. You could see these interviews that he did, and he's not that good of an actor, where you can kind of see his wheels turning on this idea of a worldwide virus that would maybe, we're going to create a problem and then sell you the solution. Oh, by the way, the solution kills you more than the actual problem. And I'm not stepping that far out of school to say, did that happen? I mean, are we seeing that? Well, I mean, when you start looking at the Pfizer's own documents showed 44% of pregnancies post-COVID vax ended in miscarriages. And I know I'm not getting off on a whole sidebar here, but others are saying it was close to 80%. So if someone had the goal to run the narrative of shrinking the population to perhaps pave the way for AI,
right,
and a drastic desire for AI, wouldn't maybe forcing you to get an experimental vaccine to protect you from a lab-leaked virus be a very convenient way to do it?
And you look back to his connections to Planned Parenthood.
Absolutely.
And you go, well, what is Planned Parenthood? But nothing but a genocide
extermination.
Machine. It's exactly what it is. And I think this is where I struggle with people. Because when you try to bring these up, they don't want to talk about it. Don't want to talk about it. You're a conspiracy theorist. I go, you have too much faith in depravity of humanity. I told someone this the other day. I go, just let me take you down a little history lesson. Let's look at history over just even the last 2,000 years. We'll just do a short history, right? Let's go back through world leaders that were complete evil, that wanted to eradicate and genocide people for their agendas. Are you telling me that somehow we've gotten to a point today that there's no longer the Hitlers, there's no longer the Stalins, there's no longer these people that, are you telling me
no,
that
they're more sophisticated now.
They are more sophisticated, and it comes across, I would say, even today, I would say it comes across even more Christian-y. Things are done in the common good, that they use the language, and you go, man, that's really sounds awesome. Where do I sign up for that? And you're like, no, don't sign up for that. And I think that's where I go. I honestly believe people don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe it because, like, are you telling me that we've evolved the human race, that there's never going to ever be a Hitler, there's never going to be some world leader to cause that kind of destruction with that agenda? If you believe that, sorry, but you're foolish.
But I defend those people in a little bit of a way because they're such good people. They can't imagine that somebody could be that
But
evil.
I think that's the thing is, if you give any rent in your mind for that to be a possibility, if you begin to go, oh, I have to acknowledge that there could be evil out there in these world leaders, now I have to figure out, what do I do with that?
And you said one time the biggest goal of Satan is to convince people he doesn't exist.
100%. And the Bible's so clear over and over again that Satan is the ruler of this world. There's so many verses that talk about there are those who are empowered demonically. I've said this before. Some of them are doing it blindly. They actually think what they're doing is good. I said this, like, you could actually have allegiance to Satan either out of deception, thinking I'm doing this out of ignorance. I thought I was doing it good. A lot of them are doing it out of arrogance. It's complete defilement, rebellion against God, and it's self-preservation, it's self-promoting, it's elitism. We're going to be the top of the food chain of the human race, all of those things. But it is demonic, and I just kind of think, wait, especially for Christians, come on, don't be so naive to think that level of evil doesn't exist anymore, that can't possibly happen. All I'm saying is be open, because the reason I say that is because it's the beginning of discernment. The moment that you rule that out and go, oh, we can never see that happen, there's never, like, no. I'm like, dude, that's why I said earlier, that's the path of a fool. If you want to be discerning, you have to realize that Jesus said it. This is what Jesus said in his own words. Jesus said, you're either for me or you're against me. Those are his words. And I think there's a lot of people that, and the Bible also talks about how there's the Antichrist spirit. The Bible talks about an Antichrist figure. and there's theories on that, but it's clear the Bible says that the spirit of Antichrist is already at work in the world. Meaning this, there are those who are demonically led, inspired, in positions of power and influence, who are anti-Christ, the values of Christ, working against Christ, what he wants. So the Bible just teaches us like 101. So then if you can believe that, it just provides a better lens to go, don't be duped. Don't be duped. And this is why I think AI potentially can evolve, grow, if you will, to be part of a deceptive tool used by world leaders. And like I said, it has to have enough success of good to sweeten it. And like I said, there is a lot of good in it. I'm not saying no, we should use AI. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying let's do it with eyes wide open, do it with discernment, and recognize the potential of where this could go, and just be aware of that.
Who is programming it at this point? Does anybody know that?
I think there's
and one
theories that I've read or heard on it is that it's learning itself. It's kind of self-programming.
I did hear that.
It's taking information in, processing it, and it's actually learning. It's growing, and that's
there was one
fascinating.
One scary thing I heard the other day. I was hearing somebody talk about these guys were baffled because they started an AI program. It was like an individual program, and they didn't allow it to know a language, and it crossed over out of their control and learned the language from another AI computer.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, wait a minute, we didn't program this, but it had learned and borrowed. And then there was also, the CAPTCHA thing on programs, like it'll say, we got to see that you're not a robot, and you're not seeing.
Click on the traffic lights.
You're not seeing those much anymore. They said because people have programmed AI. So here's the funny thing is, and it's not that far from like the movie iRobot,
right?
Where they get the 3 laws or whatever, the robots. Oh, you're safe.
They programmed them.
Yeah.
Fail safes.
Supposedly, they had programmed this particular AI program to not be able to lie, but it's got to be able to do these things. But it was solving the CAPTCHA puzzles because when it said, "Are you human?" it reasoned with itself and said that if I say I'm sight impaired,
no way.
Yeah, it learned how to bypass the system in like 5 minutes.
No
and they said they took great care when they programmed it to stump it, like to say, well, it can't possibly get past this I am not a robot screen. But it figured out if it lied by just saying I don't have any. And it was some program. I can't remember the whole story. I should have more detail on this. But there was another one that it was talking to a live person. The AI was talking to a person who was the safeguard, and it was reasoning with this person. The person said, "Well, you can't." I think it went to another screen where somebody live hopped on, and it said, "Oh, I'm. Are you a robot? No. I don't have any sight. I'm a blind person." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And it let them pass the screen. And they're like, "Wait a minute, we said this thing couldn't lie." But then somehow they figured out that it found a way
It'll learn
to justify it to its program. But that scared me because that shows a little bit of ability to be diabolical.
Yeah.
And then you're like, "Well, wait a minute, what did we have?" And that kind of, so I talk about the movie The Matrix, and then iRobot is another scary one because if you haven't seen that Will Smith movie.
Okay, and I know this is a kind of a fun podcast.
Yes, it is.
Some of them we go deeper and more, like
but
our
this
last
has,
one.
But this has biblical
for me, I think
basis.
it does, because I go, if I believe that this could be part of a mass deception, it's important for us to tell people, don't be naive to this, because here's where I see it happening, and this has me very concerned. I think we're going to see artificial intelligence move more into artificial relationship. This scares me, like maybe even more, because we're so narcissistic and self-driven. Sex robots.
Yep.
You know where I was going with this.
Yep.
And like what is so accessible right now, it's creepy.
Have you seen him on TikTok?
Oh yeah,
I'll be scrolling through,
yeah.
and then the girl will be talking,
Yeah.
and then it takes you a few minutes, and you're like, she's not real.
Not real. It's creepy.
And there's guys who
oh yeah,
are now starting relationships,
That's what
and
I'm
you
saying.
can customize.
That's what I'm saying. And there's movies. Okay, so remember
and
when
not even to a sex degree yet.
no, that's what I'm
just
saying.
a relationship.
That's what I'm saying. It's going to move from artificial intelligence to artificial relationship.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to just be sex.
No.
But I remember
She builds you up and lets you know, tells you what you want to hear.
That's what I'm saying. Remember when we were back in the 80s, there was a movie called Weird Science?
Oh, yeah.
I loved that show when I was a kid because that, you're going through hormones and puberty. And
It was a young Robert Downey Jr.
It was.
Anthony Michael Hall.
It was. And I remember that movie because the premise of it was these two kids figured out how to create the perfect woman.
Mm-hmm.
And in the movie, you're like, I can get down with this.
It's a great movie.
Right? And
it's such a perfect 80s movie, too.
It was. And to me, it's a commentary on our narcissism.
Gary and Wyatt.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I love that movie.
And I think one of the reasons we loved it, at least why I loved it, and this is my flesh depravity talking right now. The reason I liked it is I went, I'd love to be able to do that. Who wouldn't want to be able to create something in your image that worships you, beckons to you, serves you, pleases you, affirms you, all of that?
She helped the nerds become the popular kids.
Exactly.
Essentially.
That's exactly what it was. But we're living that right now.
Kelly LeBrock, that was her name.
Yes, the actress.
Yes.
Yes. And the crazy thing is now I'm watching videos and I'm going, is this real? As I'm researching this, because I'm going to be talking about this in a book coming up that I'm researching for.
Best-selling author.
Yeah, right. But it will be a part of this because it speaks to our level of self-worship. Like, are we at such a point, and I do believe this is how we started the whole thing with transhumanism and we are gods and all this kind of stuff, is there's going to be robots created in our image to serve us. And I think it's going to replace, in a really destructive way, relationships. It's going to be artificial relationships. If you think about it right now, porn is already an artificial relationship.
Sure.
Porn is it's artificial, and yet I'm getting something from this artificial, what I'm watching. It's not real. It's a fantasy. But then you add skin and flesh that's artificial. You add something that engages with you, asks you how your day is. How do you want to feel?
Solves problems for
all
you.
of that. Yeah. It becomes something that I develop. We're already developing listen to this. We already develop relationships with technology.
Yes.
I have a relationship with my phone that at times is really unhealthy.
Best friend.
Carry it with me everywhere.
Yep.
And I have separation anxiety.
Get nervous
when
if
it's
you
not
thought of-
around.
Oh, yeah.
That's relationship language.
Yeah, it is.
And you go, that's just a stinking phone.
Yeah.
But you put this in the form of a person that then is expressing emotions and caring for you. Don't tell me this is nonsense. We're so at the doorstep of this world.
Yeah, we are.
So then you go, okay, that unravels to a whole nother level of destruction and deception and all of those sort of things.
So how to kind of get to kind of round third here. So I mentioned that if, humans being created in the image of God, and to defame humans is to defame God. So as people and men, and these are fun things to kick around. They really are. They're interesting. How do we guard against this stuff? Because look at how fast in about a year. I remember my friend saying, a buddy of mine said, my son it was 11 o'clock and he forgot he had a report due the next day. And he used the first edition of ChatGPT to write an essay. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I didn't think I should let him do it, but at the same time, he was up against it. He has studied it. He justified it.
Oh, yeah.
And then I remember my son had I think it was a music class, and he had to take two different composers and talk about the differences between the two. And so I'm trying to help him. I've never heard of these composers. I mean, I heard of them, but I don't know much about them. So I kind of I go, well, if I just use this to kind of educate myself, Cliff Notes,
Yeah.
and then we'll write something out of
Absolutely.
that.
Totally.
But enough of it, the teachers caught on really fast to this, and they had some program they could run. So a bunch of kids got, not in bad trouble, but a bunch of teachers said, that was ChatGPT. So it didn't take them long before they caught up
Oh, exactly.
with the fact that the kids are using this. My point is, we went from that a year and a half ago, probably, and look where we're at now. So you give this 5 years, where are we going to be?
I know.
So my point was,
The trajectory is there.
my question was, how does somebody who is in a healthy walk in their faith life, what do you tell them? How do they guard against this? How do they prepare for this?
I think at the end of the day, it's a couple things. One is we need to be discerning. And how do you be discerning? Anything that claims to be an authority other than God being your ultimate authority, bells should go off. And that includes pastors. Like I tell people all the time, like pastors are men. And yes, they're gifted. Yes, they're anointed. But if you're in I tell this to people all the time, if you're in a church and the pastor says, just trust me, and doesn't tell you to look things up and study for yourself, get out of that church. That's a person that's going to be a cult leader. Yes, there's gifted. Yes, you should respect your pastors. Yes, God can speak through them as teachers using the gift that he gives them through the Holy Spirit. Again, that's all done good, but it's also done in a way where you say, but the goal of a teacher is to empower and equip people that they can read the word for themselves. They can have a relationship with God. They can pray with God personally. And so anytime a pastor wants to put them between you and God, that's a scary place. And I only say that is because there's a battle for authorities in our lives. And anything that puts its place as the authority more than God, that should be a red flag. I think that we live in a world of deception, and so it's all going to be twisted. It's going to sound good. Things are going to sound very, even at times, Jesus-y, Christian. But I've said this in our church a lot, but discern the spirit behind these things. And that means you just have to. The best example is this. You talk about counterfeits. The people who know what a counterfeit is someone who has handled the real stuff enough that when the counterfeit bill is passed through their hands, they just instantly recognize it because they're so familiar with the genuine. So be more familiar with the genuineness of God, that when the counterfeit shows up, it's just so easy to spot. And I think that's just true as we live in the world that we're in now. And I think the other thing is we have to guard our hearts around our own narcissistic tendencies. Know that at the end of the day, I have a bent towards self-worship. I have a bent towards self-gratification.
And false idols.
And anything in our world that says, you be the God, you put yourself there, that takes us. Paul said to the Corinthians, he says, I'm worried about you that you will fall into the same temptation as Eve and Adam in the garden. And so I would echo his pastoral comment. I have the same concern that we today would fall into the same temptation back to the garden, that we are becoming gods. Your truth, your reality, you be the authority because it's your authentic self and all this other stuff. And anything that sets itself up as a position in place of God, all that, including ourselves, should be red flags.
And as you just said, you go back and read some of the word, there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
This has all been done before. And I know AI looks different, but even back when Paul was preaching what you just talked about, well, that was the next worrisome thing coming down the pipe.
And I'll just say this at the end. We don't have time to get into this a lot, but Jesus talked about it. There's 3 times in the Bible, and there might be more than this I could break down, but there's 3 significant places in the New Testament, Jesus being one of them, and then 2 other places, Thessalonians and then Timothy, speak to that as we get closer to the Lord's return. Jesus said one of the signs, a falling away of the faith. There will be a movement that's big enough, not an individual, but there will be something significant enough before Jesus returns that people will abandon their faith, and there will be a deception that is involved in that. And I think as believers, whether Jesus comes back this year, 20 years, 100 years, that's not the point. The point is, I do think that Jesus gave warning signs.
Yeah.
And warning signs are meant to give you warning. Pay attention. And one of the things you got to be paying attention to is that there will be some deception that I think is significant enough that it causes people to leave and abandon their faith. And again, I know that's what Jesus said. Thessalonians talks about that. Timothy talks about that, or Paul tells that to Timothy. What that looks like, I don't know. I can just tell you there will be that. What it looks like, what causes that, I can speculate. And it might be something that we're seeing with AI potentially, who knows? But the point of it is that guarding our own hearts, I think that we're seeing even that right now. I do think we're actually seeing two movements happening in the church right now. We're seeing people who are reconstructing / deconstructing. They're leaving faith in Jesus and putting faith in self. And we're also, so that's the negative of it. But at the same time, the Holy Spirit is moving and people are on fire for Jesus, unlike I've seen in my lifetime. And it's really exciting to see that. And so I think two things are happening at the same time. And is this tied into that? Who knows? But I see those two things moving right now. There are people who are like, I'm leaving the faith, moving towards a self-centered faith. Again, the deconstruction movement is mostly being reconstructed around yourself, your preferences, your truth, all of that. That's happening pretty significantly. But also at the same time, the encouraging thing is, man, it's really cool days we're living in with God moving, the Holy Spirit's moving. I've seen that globally everywhere I travel. And so God is faithful. His word promises that he will always keep a remnant that's faithful and on fire. And I just want to be, so my word is, let's be a part of the remnant.
And you have a book coming out, which is going to discuss some of this stuff.
That's right. It'll break down. Yeah, in fact, when I was in Canada last week, my editor called me. We've been going back and forth on a title, and the title of the book now officially.
I didn't want to give that
I've been
out,
waiting to say it, because when you're working with editors, you're talking through different potential titles, but it landed last week. It's official now that the title of the book is A Compelling Faith in a Compromising Culture. A compelling faith in a compromising culture.
Can you say what it was going to be?
Yeah, it was going to be called The Radical Remnant. And radical doesn't mean fanatical. It came from the idea of when you put a seed in the ground, the first roots that come out of a seed are called the radicals. And it's spelt a little different, but it's pronounced radical. And so the Bible says, be deeply rooted in Jesus. And when you're deeply rooted in Jesus, you have an unshakable faith, even in shakeable times when things are. And so the whole premise is still there, even though the book is going to be titled A Compelling Faith in a Compromising Culture. It will still be using that idea of how do I be so rooted in the truth of God, the power of God, that even in a culture that might be shifting and there's all these weird things happening with technology and geopolitical stuff and circumstances and natural disasters, I can actually be so thriving and flourishing. I can have a compelling faith that others look at and go, man, I want what you have. Even in times where there seems to be compromise and people shifting away from authority of God's scripture and authority of Jesus in their life, a compelling faith.
Can't wait for the next book. And as I've mentioned, you can go on verticalpursuit.org. There's some great stuff in there and some stuff that you've put together that like Jake Schween, others have put together. The book, the Vertical Pursuit book, and then the Vertical Pursuit app. It's in the App Store. And not only can you get this podcast on that app, if that's not how you listen to this, we're on Spotify and iTunes too, but you can get it on the app. And then there's some great resources on there as well. And some stuff like even on Instagram, Vertical Pursuit, you can follow us there because you give some great short inspirational type messages. And the VP boat.
VP boat.
VP
boat.
aluminum fishing boat will be on the on the Instagram page soon. So I think this was episode 60. So we appreciate you listening as always, and we will see you next time, hopefully with more stories about the VP boat and successful fishing trips. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast, comment, or message us, and check out our website at verticalpursuit.org. Download the VP app and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.